Hey guys, welcome back to another digital painting tutorial where we will be painting this fox. If you would like to use the same reference that I used, feel free to go down in the description and click on the photograph linked. Let's go over the dimensions and color profile. First, we go into Actions, Canvas, Canvas Information. Here is where you can title your artwork and sign your name if you choose. The dimensions that we use for this project is 5000 pixels by 3800 pixels at 300 dpi. The color profile is the default. It is the second from the top of the options provided. And now we can begin. Here is my sketch. For now, I am going to slide to the left and select lock. This will ensure that I can't erase or accidentally mess up my sketch. I'm going to add a layer, which is now layer 2, by selecting the plus sign right there. And I will be selecting in the color tool the dark brown. Under my brushes, I would like to go into the airbrushing, and then I'm going to select hard airbrush. I'm going to use this to put down my base color. Now that that is complete, I'm going to select the plus sign and add a layer, which is now going to be layer 3, and I'm going to select this cream color. And this is where we can block in the other color, which is the cream color, that will also be making up part of the fox's fur. Be sure to use reference for the colors. I used a variety of references, everything from illustrations and other paintings to photographs. This allowed me to create a realistic painting style, but with a more characterized illustration coloring. I went in and selected this black or near black color for the bottom of the legs, as well as the shadow on that back leg there. I'm not worrying about the placement of these blocked in colors being perfect because we will be blending them in using the smudge tool. So here we're going to the smudge tool. Under organic is the twig, and that twig brush is what I use to smudge and create a fur-like texture. This brush is predominantly the main brush that we use throughout this piece. so don't be surprised if you see me using it a lot. Swiping back and forth, you'll be able to blend the colors much more seamlessly and really get this feel for fur or hair. This brush also will allow you to change the hair strokes and like what direction they're heading in, which I also like. Now that I have some of the basic blending down, I am going to add a brownish orange, which I end up adding there. And I go into the organic brush and select twig. And now I'm going to start hand painting in some of the fur. We're still painting solely on layer 2, and I turn on the sketch just so I can make sure that I'm understanding where all the anatomy is going to come in, and this will help me determine basic highlighting and shadow. Now I'm selecting the smudge tool, and now I'm starting to blend in the brush strokes that I had put in initially. Now I'm going to start working on the face. What you will notice as we go through this piece is I bounce around a lot, and that's because I don't like to get stuck in one particular spot because I find that the eye gets very comfortable very quickly and it can be difficult to see changes that need to be made if we stay in one area for too long. So I personally opt to move around a lot, and this helps me make sure that my eyes remain fresh during the piece. However, I still encourage people to step away from their piece and give your eyes a rest altogether at least once an hour. When I smudge here, I end up realizing that I need a sharper edge. So what I do is I use the Inka brush under inking as my main eraser. I like this brush because it has a nice defined edge, but it also still has texture. So I feel that it keeps the continuity of the style intact when we erase. Like other projects, I do zoom in and zoom out quite often to make sure that all the colors are reading correctly at a distance as well as up close. I do edit out a good portion of those just because I think it ends up being sort of like a motion sickness effect. But do know that I am zooming in and zooming out to ensure that the colors are reading correctly, as well as the highlights and the shadows. As we did in the previous steps, I'm boxing in colors throughout the fox, and I will go in and blend them once I feel like I have a good idea of where I want these colors to show up. Here you will see that I am selecting one of the cream colors and I'm just working that into the fur. All right, and now we're going to just make sure we're working in the other colors because the fur would not be a singular color. There's obviously going to be highlights, shadows, and various colors because fur is not one color. I select the darker color that we use, almost black color that we use for the legs, and I use this color underneath the maw of the fox to just sort of help push the visual of the fox turning its head. This will help create a sense of where the light is unable to touch the fur, as well as create some definition of the fox's face versus the neck and the chest. When I like the way that it looks, I do end up combining that layer, which was layer 3 to layer 2, and add a new layer, which now becomes our new blank layer 3. And on this layer, this is where I will be adding in the black for the nose, as well as the points where the whiskers and the eyebrows are. I wanted to keep this layer separate until I was certain I liked how it looked and that I felt confident in the lines that I was creating. On this layer, I use the Smudge Tool Inca brush so that I can just soften up some of these lines and get some different shading in here. Once I feel satisfied with how that looks, I combine those layers. And now I continue to work in the black and the shading around the face. And as I did before, anything that I'm not certain I will like, I add on a new layer. So I selected the plus sign and created a new layer 3 for me to start getting whiskers and eyebrow whiskers down as well. All right, making sure I'm on layer 2, which is our main layer, I am now selecting a rather vibrant orange and making it a little bit more on the yellow side. You should have that color in the hexadecimal colors provided in the description below. And I am now making sure that both my brush and my smudge tool are on twig, because I'm going to start doing more of the fur on the fox. Keep in mind, my source of light is heavy and straight above, and so I'm trying to keep that in mind as I'm adding colors to the fur of exactly where the light would be catching in the fur. And if it does help, you can, of course, paint in sort of a light source at the top to just help you better visualize where light would be picking up. Now we'll be adding another layer, which will be layer 4. And layer 4 is where we will work on the ears. Once I feel good about how the ear hair looks, then we can combine everything. Now, the tops of the fox's ears will have black tips, so we want to make sure we go back to layer 3 where we have some details that we aren't sure if we want to keep them as they are. And we're going to select the ink brush and add in the darker tips of the ears here. Heading back into layers, I'm going to move layer 4 above layer 3 and combine layer 3 with layer 2. On layer 2, I'm going to add in some additional shading to the ears so that way we know that the fur starts out light before it starts heading up to the tips where it gets darker. Using the twig smudge tool, I'm going to reselect layer 4 so that I can start working on blending the hairs of the ear. Once I feel good about that, I'm going back to layer 2 and I'm going to smudge some of the original ear before I combine the two layers together. Which I combine them right here. Holding down on the fur of the face, that's the cream color, I go back into my brush and select twig and use that as highlights for the hair in the ears. Once I have those base colors down, I go ahead and select the smudge tool and start smudging in that fur with the other fur that's already been painted in. I noticed that there's part of the fox's face coloring that could use a bit more smudging, so I do go and use the twig smudge tool. And then I go ahead and paint in some additional hair strokes that I want to use to further push the highlights on the fox's face. I hold down my finger and select the color that I would like to use on layer 2. I want to go back to the Inca brush and use that as the highlight for the nose so I can start creating a bit more definition. Now that I like the way that that looks, I am going to use the smudge tool and put that on Inca as well so that I can just gradually smudge some of the colors together. Next, I go and select the twig smudge tool so that I can work on the details of the fur on this hind leg. And at this point, I feel good about where the fox is overall, and we're going to start working on the ground beneath the fox. So we're going to add a new layer by selecting the plus sign, which is now layer 3, and we're going to move it beneath the fox layer. Here is the organic brush library, and we're under the brush rainforest. We're going to duplicate that brush so that we can make some adjustments and amendments to the brush. Majority of this takes place in the stroke properties, but also in the dynamics. Now we have a nice variety of texture that we can use as ground for which the fox will be standing on. Now that we have the fox in the ground adjusted, we're going to add a new layer above the fox, which will be layer 4. And in this layer, we are going to use wild grass. We do need to amend this brush, however, so let's duplicate the original. So we're going to go first into the shape, and we're going to turn until it's all the way down at the bottom, so that way when we draw, the brush strokes are heading upward. The blades of grass are up towards the sky. The other adjustments that we will be making will be under the stroke pressure as well as dynamics. And now we can start painting in some various grass to build up our field texture. It's like a field of wheat or dead grass. I don't know. You guys decide. Now I'm going to select the smudge tool and the rainforest brush, and I'm going to soften up the edges. I essentially wanted to give the effect almost that we would get out of a photograph if something was in focus and the edges were more blurred. Still on layer 3, I want to make sure that I pick a slightly darker color. And I'm going to return back to the rainforest brush so that I can add more dark texture underneath the fox so that we get a sense of where the light is coming from, which would be above, meaning that it would cast shadow directly beneath the fox. Selecting one of the cream colors that's very light, I want to highlight the ground, specifically behind the fox, because I feel like it'll give a much better illusion of how intense the light is coming down. Making sure I am on layer 4, I select one of the warmer beige colors and I use that to start painting in more texture and detail as well as color variation around the feet of the fox. Returning back to the fox layer, which is layer 2, I go back to my smudge tool, the twig brush, and I start smudging the fur into parts of the leg that I have not yet done. I also make sure to soften up the parts where the foot meets the ground. Heading back into my layers, I'm going to select layer 4, and then I'm going to select the cream color, and I'm going back to the wild grass because I want to make a slight amendment. So see those colors? I'm going back into the color dynamics and I'm taking out the saturation, lightness, darkness, and making the hue quite low. So that way, when I go to brush the grass color variation is not too stark. Once I like the way that looks, I'm going back into my layers. I'm going to layer 4, adding a layer above that, so now it's layer 5, selecting the cream color, making that layer 5, add blending mode, and now I'm going to take the twig brush to create some blades of grass in the back. I should have gone a little bit slower on this so that I could have really defined the way that I wanted them to look, so by all means take more time than I did. Remaining on that same layer, I'm now going to select the airbrush, hard airbrush brush. I think you guys get what I'm saying. And I'm going to use that to highlight certain parts of the fox's fur. This is probably my favorite part. The eye whiskers. I thought that really helped bring all of the lighting together. And because lighting is my favorite, I did want to go in under elements, grab the snow brush. Now, is it actually snowing? I don't know. I think it's more of just getting dust, like dust particles in the air, and the light is just catching it magically. Almost done, guys. So right now I'm going to add a layer above layer 2, which is now layer 7, and create a clipping mask. I'm going to select this orange and make the blending mode. I guess we're going to wait a second. We're going to make sure I'm on twig. I'm going to brush the color on, and then I'm going to select the blending mode, which I end up with soft light, I believe. Nope, light color. And then I take the time to, smudge and blend like I've done in the previous layers. Lighting truly is one of my favorite parts of a painting, so I tend to see how far I can push the lighting at the end of each of my pieces. Now, this is my first time painting a fox. So, in the future, there might be some differences that I would make. But overall, I feel relatively pleased with the way that this came out. In my layers, I'm going to combine 5 and 6 because they are both the same blending mode. On a new layer, I'm going to grab this yellowish color and put that layer 6 on add blending mode and do the final touches for really pushing the way that light is catching on this fur. Returning to layer 5 where there is the add blending mode on, I'm going to select the hard airbrush and continue to build up the highlights of the fur just along the edges. Final touch, and we're all done. Thank you so much for watching this digital painting tutorial. I plan on expanding on this piece, so if you would like to see the part 2, be sure to subscribe and check back later. Thank you again, and I'll talk to you guys real soon. Okay, bye.